Let me just say this, do not marry a Cinderella. Do not marry some beauty queen. You may marry a girl that is gorgeous. You may marry a girl physically beautiful. But realize this, guys, you can be carried away by your sensuality and you can follow after a girl that is death. Now I want to look at just a few things from Proverbs really quick. And again, you can have these notes. I can give them to Doug. Proverbs 31:27, she looks well to the ways of her household. That's one of the number one things that you need to think about. Here is a girl that looks to her household. She looks to her home. Now just a few things about her. We're going to look at 14 things. I'm just going to read them off. Her husband trusts in her to manage the home and the family. Verse 11. She does him good and not evil. Verse 12. She is industrious. Verse 16 through and 24. She is the very opposite of a sluggard. One of the ways you can discover whether or not you need to marry a girl, when they have open house or whatever in the dorms, I guess now it's always open house, you just go look at her dorm room. If it's a pigsty, run away from her. And I would tell her the same thing about you too. Okay? Guys, let me tell you something. It would be biblical for me to pull off my belt and whip you, okay? If I ever go to your home when you come home from school and you go back to see your mom and dad and she has to do your wash, pick up your underwear, and make your bed, you deserve to be horsewhipped. Your mother was not brought into this world to do your wash. As soon as a young man is able, he ought to be picking up his room, cleaning his room, making his bed, doing his wash, and everything else. Mom is not his servant. Your wife is not your servant. She will manage the home, she will do wash and laundry and things like this, but she should not be picking up your underwear. So she is going to be the very opposite of a sluggard, but you need to be the very opposite of a sluggard too. She delights in her work, verse 13. She arises while it is still night, verse 15. Her lamp does not go out at night, verse 18. She does not eat the bread of idleness, verse 27. She is a person who's industrious. She is serious about serving God in the context of the family. She is knowledgeable in practical duties. And this is not the fault of the young ladies. This is the fault of our culture and parents. But I mean, there are girls right now that are, they're on campus right now. They couldn't boil water. They couldn't sew. They couldn't manage a home. They couldn't do anything. And be very careful about your Christian ministries, because you'll take a girl like that and try to get her involved in discipleship. What? She can't even do the basic things of a human being, and you want her discipling someone else because she's got some of your discipleship material? We need to realize this Christianity thing is supposed to make its way down, folks, into everything, into the way we live. It's teaching people how to do what's necessary to sustain a family. To sustain a family. Guys, family is God's will. It is God's will. There are only a few people in history that have the gift of celibacy. By and large, family is God's will. God instituted the family before He did the church. Doesn't mean the family is more important than the church, but the church cannot function without the family. And the family cannot function without the church. And this world hates marriage, it hates family, it hates the role of men, and it hates the role of women. That's why men are applauded for being feminine, and women today are applauded for being masculine. Now, she's knowledgeable in practical duties. Her mother's taught her something. She has strength of character and body, verse 17 and verse 25. She is prepared for the future. She has something of a bring it on mentality, verses 21, 25. She's cared for her home. She's prepared everything that needs to be done. And she kind of stands there and says, bring it on, I'm ready. She goes beyond what the world would call beauty. She is beautiful, and she may be physically beautiful, but her beauty is inward. You're going to discover something, that after a while, it's not going to be the physical beauty of your wife that's going to make or break you. It's going to be her character. And even when she gets older, you'll sit there, and one day when she's walking with Christ, unusually in the power of the Holy Spirit, one day you're going to recognize her physical appearance hasn't changed a bit, but her spiritual appearance has changed, and it's caused you to love her like you've never loved her before. In the end, guys, the beauty has to be inward. Now, I want you to look at some verse 21 and 22. Her family is not just clothed, but her family is clothed with scarlet. Not just her family, but she herself. She's not a person who just is this miserly person that everything is poor in the home and she's just pinching pennies. No, she's a person who's able to take what she has and even make beauty out of it. Let me give you an example, guys. This is very important. Several years ago, might have been 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I don't know. I was looking at a TV, I was looking at the news, and they came on with this guy. He had a typical home in the suburbs, just an average home probably built in the 60s or something. He had 2 cars, he had a boat, he wasn't in debt, and at that time he made something like $21,000 a year, which people were saying this is impossible. The guy has a home, the guy has 2 cars, the guy has a boat, they're all paid for, and he makes $21,000 a year. This is impossible. And then they started looking at his life, and it wasn't impossible. A godly person, now listen to me, can take half the money of a wealthy person and do far more with it and prosper much more. I'll give you an example. You think you need something, so you go in debt. A godly person will wait upon the Lord and pray, and oftentimes God will provide what he needs without him ever having to go in debt. He won't compete with other people with regard to homes and cars and everything else. He saves his money. He can. One of the things that I like to do is find ways to just, well, I'll give you an example. My wife lived in Peru with me. She's lived in tents. You name it. She's done every kind of sacrifice you can imagine. When we came to the States, I wanted to make her a kitchen, a really nice kitchen, because she loves to cook. She's a great cook. And so I got her a stainless steel stove, stainless steel microwave, fridge, put this big counter, everything. People say, how'd you do it? I did it over a period of a year. 2 times each week I went to Lowe's to scratch and dent, where they have things that have a scratch behind it no one will see, and they're half what they would normally cost. It took an entire year to do it, but I built her entire kitchen with less money than it would have taken most people to buy just junk and put it in the kitchen. Praying and asking God, open up the door, please provide something. You see? It's the same way with clothing. It's the same way. A godly woman. My wife is doing this study right now on coupons because she found this lady who goes literally and buys something like a couple $100 worth of groceries every week and pays something like 46 cents because she's got these huge books of coupons. And that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about people who live miserly and they always look bad and they have nothing. I'm talking about godly people who God takes the little that they do have because they've given away, because they've made hard choices not to make money because of their family, things like that. But God can prosper them above what He prospers the wealthy. He most certainly can. Now, she is charitable, verse 20. She is marked by kindness and wisdom, verse 26. She is fruitful, verse 14. She delights in her gain, and it encourages her. She sets about with a home business. Her husband is honored by the most respected men of the city because of her, verse 23. She fears the Lord, verse 30. To end this, let me just say this. Do not marry a Cinderella. Do not marry some beauty queen. You may marry a girl that is gorgeous. You may marry a girl physically beautiful. I can assure you this is one of the ways in which you know the girl is God's girl for you. You will be attracted to her. You will think she's beautiful. She will be the girl you want to be with. But realize this, guys, you can be carried away by your sensuality and you can follow after a girl that is death. In the Scripture, there are sensual girls all throughout the book of Proverbs, and the Bible describes them as the grave, as the pit, as death, as destruction, and they really can be. Now, I want us to look at preparation prior to entering into a relationship, a courtship. First of all, in every aspect of our life, every season is God's will, and we must be content. Sometimes my little boys will say, I wish I was 16, I wish I was this, I wish I was that. And I have to point out to them that is wrong. That's even sin. That we are to be content in every stage of our lives that God has given us. Every stage. Right now in your singleness, you ought to be content. What ought you be doing? You shouldn't be chasing girls. You shouldn't be doing this and that and all these crazy things. With this free time in your singleness, you should be preparing for marriage. You should be serving the Lord in a way that you can as a single person. You should be studying hard. You should be putting back money. You should be preparing. This is a time to prepare. Look what the world tells you. You're single, you're free, waste it. Just think about this. You're single, you're free, waste it. Play Xbox until 3 in the morning, go out partying, run around with your friends, and in the end, you've accomplished nothing. We're a culture of fun, and in the end, there's nothing to show for it. Use this time. Completely opposite of what the world tells you. Use it to invest. Now, I want us to look at areas of preparation. This is important. First of all, spiritually. I like to say, if you think John the Baptist wrote the Gospel of John, then you are not spiritually prepared to be married. If you don't know the Scriptures, you should not think at all about the opposite sex. Intellectually, if you have books with only big pictures in them, you're probably not ready to marry. Now guys, spiritually we need to be ready. Intellectually we need to be ready to marry. Why? What do you want to hand down to your children? Do you literally want to be this person who knows nothing, so that then you have to hand your children off to some government institution to fill them up with everything they believe? You must be a person who desires to know. Most people after they graduate from college never read a book. You need to develop yourself intellectually. You need to read the classics. You need to think about using that mind of yours for a purpose and to grow in every area of your life, spiritually, intellectually, emotionally. Now let me just say this, if you throw a temper tantrum because your parents will not let you go to the mall, if you're depressed because you do not have the latest version of Xbox, or you lock yourself in a room and cry because it looks like the barber used a weed eater to cut your hair and it doesn't look nice, you got some serious problems. But the reason why I give these illustrations, I've seen this out of college students. Guys, all right, they're emotionally, they're just little girls. And they're always crying to one another and sharing feelings. You didn't get, that's not who you are. You were taught to do that. You were taught to think this way.